Toxic mother-in-law told me I wasn't family right before our vacation. So my husband and I ditched them at the airport and went on our own trip. So a few days ago, my husband's family and I were about to leave for a family vacation. They have a ritual of having an annual family vacation where my in-laws all get together, pick a destination, and take a week off of everything to travel. My husband, 30M, and I, 30F, got married recently, but we'd been together for 3 years before and I was quite excited to be a part of this for the first time. The year before this, while we were engaged, he asked me to join him, but since his family hadn't asked me, I felt weird and said no. But this time, my mother-in-law Sandra asked me to join them, and that was a pretty big deal. I had a feeling that Sandra didn't really like me before, since she had never made me feel welcome as part of the family. She had been outright mean to me, but she just wasn't as nice to me as she was to other people and always seemed a little distant and kind of cold when it came to me. I think a major part of the reason that she seemed to dislike me was because when we started dating, my husband moved out of their house and started living with me instead. I think that's about the time that her behavior towards me started changing and getting colder, but obviously, she couldn't hold it against me, so she tried to cover it up as much as she could. But I picked up on certain things, and I knew that she didn't like the fact that I was the reason her son had moved out of the family home to live with me. I'm quite independent and have been living away from my parents ever since I started college, so moving in with his parents was never an option for me. Living with his family or even mine was never on the cards for me and was pretty much a non-negotiable. I wasn't going to do that after marriage, and I certainly wasn't going to entertain living with his parents or love close to them and have them drop by every other day while we were dating. I don't think there was anything unreasonable about what I wanted, and I was perfectly clear about these things with my husband when we first started dating and talking about moving in together, and he was okay with it. And as long as he was fine with it, I didn't see any reason for anybody else to feel negatively about it. He had also been considering getting a place of his own and moving out, but the only thing that had been stopping him was the fact that his mother wanted everybody to live together under one roof. Or at least close by, so the family could get together on the weekends or even every other day, and so far, she had managed to make it happen. My husband has an older sister who's married and has a daughter. After getting married, she moved out of the family home because of space issues, but she just moved down the street and they get together every other day. So I feel like Sandra feels that that is the only normal way to live, and what I want is unreasonable because she is used to having her kids around all the time. But my husband prefers to live with me, away from his family, since he says that he grew up with having absolutely zero privacy and he appreciates the space now. So my husband and I are quite happy with our living arrangements, but I know that somewhere Sandra holds me responsible for this and maybe feels like I am the reason her son doesn't want to live with his family anymore. That's the only reason I can think of for her not liking me, because apart from that, I have always been very pleasant to my husband's family and have done my best to assimilate into his family. But even that's not enough apparently, because a couple of days ago, Sandra let me know that she still doesn't consider me family, even though I married her son just a couple of months ago. We had been planning the family vacation for months and I had played an active role in it. Now usually how these things go is that my husband's parents pay for all of it, and it's never any trouble for them because they are quite well off. I had assumed that it would be the same this time around as well, because my husband had told me that we did not need to worry about the money beforehand. Just to be clear, I didn't have a problem with paying for myself, but I had been told that I wouldn't need to. So when, right before the day that we were supposed to leave for our vacation, Sandra sat me down and told me that I would need to pay for myself, it came as quite a shock to me. She had invited me over and said that she wanted to discuss certain things about the trip, so I had gone over by myself since my husband was finishing up work before he took time off. She went on to tell me that this was meant to be a family vacation and that is why she and her husband would cover all the expenses every year. But unfortunately, they didn't consider me family just yet because they felt like they hadn't gotten to know me that well. And so, she expected me to pay for myself but not make much of a fuss out of it, because that would just spoil the pre-vacation vibe and she didn't want to start off on a bad note. She didn't stop there and decided to make things worse by telling me that the reason she didn't consider me close enough to call family was because, unlike her son-in-law, she felt like she rarely ever got to see me and my husband. Because we never visited as often as the others, and that was one of the reasons why she felt like I wasn't family just yet. I was obviously very hurt by what she said because I felt like I had tried hard to get along with his family, even though Sandra had made it very clear to me that she didn't exactly approve of me. And all along she had led me to believe that I was finally part of the family by letting me be part of the planning for the vacation. She could have been upfront with me right from the beginning and I would have been okay with it, but telling me about this right before the day that we were supposed to leave just seemed unnecessarily cruel and mean. But I tried my best to hide my feelings and make it seem as though I was okay with this, and I understood, while on the inside, I was actually really upset. I didn't want to say anything until I had discussed this with my husband because I didn't want to react quickly and let my anger get the better of me. So I told her that it was okay and that I understood where she was coming from, so I would obviously pay for myself. She was a little surprised when I said that it was all fine, and I could tell that this was not the reaction that she had hoped for, but I didn't stick around to talk to her afterward and headed back home. It was all I could do to keep myself from bursting into tears as soon as I came home, but I tried to be calm and explain everything to my husband when he saw that I was visibly upset and asked me what had gone down at his mother's house. He was furious and told me that he was going to cancel the vacation then and there because he had no interest in spending any more time with his mother after the way she had insulted me. And then I told him that I had suspected that she didn't like me for quite some time, but I never brought it up because it was just a dumb theory that I had come up with to explain why she was always so cold to me. But now I was beginning to feel that it wasn't just a theory after all, and there might be some truth to it. I explained to him how his mother's behavior towards me had changed when he moved out to live with me, and she started acting cold towards me after that. Also, what she had said about me not being close enough to be considered family because I didn't visit them often, all pointed towards the same explanation. When I told him about it, he said that it could be true because he had always known that family meant a lot to his mother and she wanted him to at least live nearby. And she had been pretty upset when he had first told her that he would be moving out to live with me and that he didn't want to rent a house closer to home because he needed his personal space. Even though Sandra hadn't shown it at the time, she probably blamed me for it and was still holding it against me, which explained her behavior. However, that was still not an excuse to be so cruel to me and try to humiliate me right before we left for our vacation. I felt awful that day, and while we were talking, my husband and I decided that canceling the vacation and telling her off just wasn't good enough because I wanted her to feel just as bad as I had felt. So he and I decided that we would go along with their plan and meet at the airport the next day, but instead of accompanying them, we would just take a flight somewhere else and leave them at the airport. By the time they could understand what was going on, it would be too late and we would already be someplace else by then. It was a perfectly foolproof plan and we went through with it and got back to Sandra the very next day. We met the family at the airport, just as we had planned, but then we excused ourselves saying that we wanted to get some photos clicked and walked away. They did not suspect a thing because they were too busy talking among themselves, so we headed over to the counter and purchased us 2 tickets to a flight that would take off the earliest and to a desirable destination. We ended up picking San Francisco, and right now, we're here and it's really fun. We were supposed to go to Miami, but I prefer this because it's just me and my husband, without anyone who doesn't like me. Of course, by the time we had purchased the tickets and taken our seats on the flight, his family had figured out that something was off and tried to call us several times. They had even texted us, but we had just ignored all of it. Luckily, an airport is a pretty big place and they were not able to find us in time to stop us or confront us, and we were able to reach our destination without much drama. Once our flight landed, we finally decided to get back to them, and my husband told everybody the truth in the family text thread. He told them about what Sandra had said to me the day before and said that since this was supposed to be a family vacation and I wasn't family, we had decided that we had better stay out of this altogether, out of respect for her. We had expected Sandra to be mad at us and maybe my father-in-law, but we hadn't expected the entire family to turn against us. Everybody seemed pretty mad because we had abandoned them at the airport and they had been worried sick for us. They had still taken their flight though, so I don't understand what they were so pissed about. Anyway, they told us that it was really irresponsible and selfish of us to just go MIA without a word and leave them wondering about us. They were especially upset with me because they didn't think that Sandra's words warranted such extreme action. They believed that I shouldn't even have thought that they were going to cover for me to come on the family vacation. And that it had been my mistake not to offer to pay for myself and just assume that I could come with them for free, seeing as how I hadn't made an effort to really become a part of the family. They said that I hadn't ever tried to attend their weekly family dinners or even keep in touch with them online and chat with them every day, which they do. Apparently, it felt like I had no time for them, and while they respected that, they couldn't allow me to use them and treat them like banks. That is why Sandra had felt the need to clarify that they were not going to be paying for me to join them on the vacation, simply because I hadn't made an effort to get along with them, and neither had I even offered to pay for myself. I felt really insulted because I earned my own money and I would never expect somebody else to pay for me. So for them to imply that I was being entitled and self-centered was really not okay with me. I told them that their expectations were absolutely unrealistic and didn't even make sense. They claimed that they had dinner together weekly, but it was really every other day, and it was completely unfair of them to expect my husband and I to drive all the way to their house after work and have dinner with them so often. We wanted some personal space, and yet we still tried our very best to